My father was not born in the United States. He was born in a small coastal country in Asia, Vietnam. His family immigrated to America when he was just a baby at the end of the Vietnam War. Because I have grown up participating in parts of the culture, I know a lot about it. And today I want to share with you a little bit about Vietnam's history, their food, and some unique cultural aspects. Though most people know of the Vietnam War, the country actually has a several thousand-year history. It is a history that is riddled with unrest, even before the Indochina Wars. The beginnings of the Vietnam people vary from source to source. Because of this, I mostly stuck to one source, Linda LaCour's Harbor's fourth volume of The Mystery of History, Wars of Independence to Modern Times. Specifically, I looked at Lesson 70, called The United States Enters the Vietnam War, which gave a brief history of Vietnam. There is much folklore about the first rulers of Vietnam and their people. Some of the stories seem to have historical origin and evidence, while others are complete fantasies. But we do know that China occupied Vietnam for a very long time, from 111 BC to 939 AD, about 1,000 years. The next 1,000 years of Vietnam's history was a mess of civil wars and royal family feuding. Vietnam lost its independence again in 1836, this time to the French. It remained a colony of France for about 90 years. During that time, from 1940 to 1945, the Japanese occupied Vietnam. Shortly after the French returned after World War II, Ho Chi Minh, a philosopher and globetrotter, declared Vietnam independent. This sparked the Indochina Wars. The country was split in two, with the north mostly following Ho Chi Minh and the south favoring the French. Because Ho Chi Minh was a communist, China and Russia supported him. The United States, seeing this as an extension of the Cold War, supported the South and the French in both the First and the Second Indochina Wars. The First Indochina War lasted 8 years, from 1946 to 1954, and it ended with Vietnam being divided into North and South along the 17th parallel, much like Korea. The Second Indochina War, better known as the Vietnam War, lasted much longer, from 1957 through 1976, 19 years. It ended with Communist North controlling all of Vietnam. Communism caused economic downfall and national hardship. However, in recent years, the country has been growing economically and has become a tourist destination. In summary, Vietnam has had a turbulent history of civil wars and occupation by the Chinese, the French, and then the Japanese. Now, after 2 civil wars, it is communist. With the history of Vietnam aside, I want to tell you some about the cultural aspects of Vietnam, starting with the food. Personally, I think that Vietnamese food is the best Asian food. Forget Chinese takeout. Try some pho with egg rolls dipped in nuoc mam. All of these are common Vietnamese dishes. I'll start with pho. What is pho, you might ask? Pho is a broth soup made with meat, usually beef, and with noodles and herbs. While beef, noodles, and herbs sound like common soup ingredients, pho is unique because the noodles, they're made out of rice, which is a staple in Vietnam. It also has seafood mixed in. And on top of that, pho is highly customizable. When you order it at a restaurant, it comes with several different sauces and juices on the side so that you can add them in to your taste. These sauces and juices usually include lemon juice and nuoc mam. Nuoc mam is another essential to Vietnamese dishes. In English, nuoc mam means fish sauce, and it's sort of the Vietnamese equivalent to ketchup. Both sweet and spicy, with pepper flakes mixed in for extra kick, it can be used for dipping or for flavoring in any dish. Finally, for my favorite Vietnamese food, I want to share with you egg rolls. Filled with cabbage, carrots, meat, and noodles, they can be served as an appetizer or as a side dish. Either way, it's delicious. I grew up eating the ones that my grandmother and aunt made. However, recently, my dad, my brothers, and I have started making them on our own so that we can enjoy them between holidays and family gatherings. While I must admit to a biased opinion, I think that Vietnamese food is the best Asian food, and I always look forward to having it at holidays and family gatherings. For my third point, I want to highlight some of the unique and defining aspects of Vietnamese culture, including the religions of Vietnam, how they dress, and how they celebrate the New Year. Although since the government of Vietnam is communist and technically that means that the nation is atheist, many of the Vietnamese are not agnostics. Folklore and centuries of religious history still hold a heavy influence over the people. According to Fodder's See It, Vietnam, which is an illustrated guide of Vietnam, the largest religions are Buddhism, Roman Catholicism, and Cao Daoism, which are the first, second, and third largest religions in Vietnam, respectively. Ancient traditions also still hold a place in Vietnamese society. The family structure is essential to the Vietnamese culture. Ancestor worship is common, and grandparents are highly respected. Next, I want to tell you about the usual dress of the Vietnamese today. This is an áo dơ, which is the common dress for both men and women. It includes silk pants and a tunic, which can be plain or fancy depending on the occasion. This áo dơ is the one that my mother wore for part of her wedding. The common dress of the Vietnamese people is a plain áo dơ or pants and a collared shirt, although shorts and t-shirts are becoming more popular as the population is exposed to other influences such as tourists. Finally, I want to tell you a little bit about Vietnamese New Year, which is called Tet. Sort of a combination between the American holidays of Christmas and New Year's, it's celebrated on the same day as the better-known Chinese New Year, and it's celebrated in much the same way as well. Festivities usually include fireworks, parades, and family gatherings. Family members will give small red envelopes, called lucky envelopes, with money in them as a gift to children. To receive an envelope in my family, you must say to the relative, Chúc mừng năm mới, which means Happy New Year in Vietnamese. Vietnam's beliefs, dress, and celebrations are just a few of the defining points of the unique culture found there. In conclusion, Vietnam has a rich, if troubled, history. It also has an interesting culture with unique foods, dress, and ways of celebrating. This is my heritage, and I enjoy the unique culture and the tasty foods, of course. Many Americans have mixed feelings about Vietnam, mostly because of the war. Linda LaCour Harbour mentioned a Times poll taken in 1965, which was in the middle of the Vietnam War. It stated that 57% of Americans thought that entering the Vietnam War was a mistake. I don't know, it's not for me to judge whether it was a mistake politically, but I do know that God works all things for His glory, because if the Americans had not entered the Vietnam War, I would not be here today.